What if I told you one war, fought years before the American Revolution, actually set the stage for America's independence? Most people have heard of the Revolutionary War, but few know about the conflict that made it almost inevitable. It was called the French and Indian War, and although it ended with Britain claiming victory, the consequences would ultimately cost the British Empire its most valuable colonies. This is the story of the war that changed America forever. By the mid-1700s, North America had become a battleground for two powerful European empires. Great Britain controlled the eastern colonies along the Atlantic coast. France claimed a vast territory stretching from Canada through the Great Lakes and down the Mississippi River to Louisiana. Both nations wanted control of valuable land and the profitable fur trade. Between them lived many indigenous nations, each with their own interests and alliances. Some sided with the French, while others partnered with the British, making the conflict far more complex than a simple fight between two European powers. As settlers pushed westward into the Ohio River Valley, tensions finally reached a breaking point. In 1754, a 22-year-old Virginia officer named George Washington was sent into the Ohio Valley to warn French forces to leave territory claimed by Britain. The French refused. Soon after, Washington and his men clashed with French troops in one of the first skirmishes of the war. He later built Fort Necessity, but was surrounded and forced to surrender. Although it was a defeat, this would become George Washington's first major military experience. No one could have imagined he would one day command the Continental Army and become the first president of the United States. What began as a regional conflict soon grew into a global war. Fighting spread across North America, Europe, the Caribbean, Africa, and even Asia. Today, many historians consider it the first true world war. British soldiers fought alongside colonial militias. French forces worked closely with many indigenous allies who sought to defend their own lands and interests. Battles were fought through dense forests, across rivers, and around remote frontier forts. Conditions were harsh. Disease, hunger, and exhaustion claimed nearly as many lives as combat. Everything changed in 1759. British forces captured Quebec after the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, one of the war's most decisive battles. 4 years later, the Treaty of Paris officially ended the conflict. France surrendered nearly all of its territory in mainland North America east of the Mississippi River to Britain, dramatically expanding British control. Britain had won, but victory came at an enormous cost. The war had left the British government buried in debt. Someone would have to pay. British leaders believed the American colony should help cover the expenses of the war that had protected them. Parliament soon introduced new taxes and stricter regulations. Many colonists strongly disagreed. They believed they should not be taxed by a government in which they had no elected representatives. The phrase, "no taxation without representation," would soon become one of the most famous slogans in American history. The French and Indian War was over, but a much larger conflict was just beginning. The French and Indian War reshaped North America. It expanded British territory. It launched George Washington's military career, and it set the stage for the American Revolution. In our next episode, we'll explore why Britain began taxing the colonies and how those decisions pushed America closer to independence. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and join us as we continue exploring the history of America, one chapter at a time.